Well, Herb, good to talk to you. Thanks for your time. That must have been quite a season. The day in, day out coverage. You're a couple weeks removed now. What was it like covering that White Sox season on that day in, day out coverage you all do?
Kind of hard, but they're paying me to watch baseball, so it's not. I'm not digging ditches. I'm not working graveyard shifts, so I'm just watching baseball. And so we started this venture thinking like this is the ascension of the White Sox. We started in 2022, and so that off season we're like, okay, they just went to the playoffs the year before. We're gonna be seeing better baseball in 2022. That didn't happen under Tony La Russa, where they went 81 and 81. And after that season last year, I was like, it can't get worse. It's only going to get better. I was
Right.
wrong because this White Sox team went 61 and 101 this year. It was just a train wreck pretty much from the beginning. They had a good starting series versus the Houston Astros, who are the reigning champs. But after that, it was just disaster after disaster after disaster. Injuries, infighting, whatever you think could go wrong and more went wrong with this White Sox team. It was just kind of a sludge to the end. Like by June, usually I'm like, okay, here we go. We're rounding into form and we're going to be coming down the stretch and thinking about the players the White Sox are going to acquire at the trade deadline. By June this year, I was like, I'm good. Let the season end already because after a while, you're just talking about the same old things that keep on happening with this team because I think it's a bad organization and they hire bad people to run it. And so that's why the two main guys at the top, Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn, got fired.
Yeah, there is no grind like a Major League Baseball season. I don't care. I know NBA, NHL, they play a lot of games. There's nothing like Major League Baseball. In terms of the window, right? We have this window to win with this particular team, whoever it is. Is there any semblance of that term, the window, that you could apply to the 2024 White Sox? Is it completely closed and starting over, or are there enough pieces around where you still say they're in some semblance of that same window, whether they're stuck in it or not?
The saving grace for the White Sox is they're in the worst division in baseball, the AL Central. And while the Minnesota Twins only won, I think, 86 games to win that division, running away, by the way, they played well in the playoffs and got into the second round, which is the first time they've done that, I think, since like 2003. So that is the only saving grace. That's the only window that's open is that they play in a bad division, and that's how you get into the playoffs. And as we've seen with teams like the Phillies, who got second place in their division, and now they're tied up with the Diamondbacks, and same thing with the Diamondbacks, who got second place in their division, and they beat the team that was ahead of them. Just get in. If you have pitching and people going off at the right time, yeah, you can make some noise in the playoffs. But for all intents and purposes, the window closed for me when Lucas Giolito got traded. Even though the season was bad, he was the guy that I saw as the ace of the team when we started this whole rebuild and ascension to the 2020 playoff team and 2021 playoff team. And we marked his contract, which was going to be up this year, as the time where the White Sox got a strike because of him being gone, Lance Lynn being gone after this year, Mike Clevenger, even though I don't like him, being gone more than likely. If you don't have starting pitching, it's going to be really hard for you to compete in any type of division or any type of American League, as you see with all that's going on in the playoffs right now. When you don't have pitching, you get eliminated quickly. The Rays, with all their injury problems, didn't have Shane McClanahan at the beginning of their rotation, and that's why they had a quick exit. And the same thing with the Dodgers, where you're depending on Clayton Kershaw. We know his playoff history not that good, and then all the injuries to Walker Bueller, the Julio Urias thing, where he's arrested for the second time for domestic abuse. They don't have the starting pitchers, and that's why I think the White Sox window is kind of closed because Lucas is gone now, and they only have two starting pitchers returning. One of them is Michael Kopech, which is really bad, and the other one's Dylan Cease, who had a mediocre year this year. So, yeah, I would say for the purposes of the rebuild and how Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams built it up, yeah, it's gone. the window's closed on that. I know the White Sox are kind of optimistic because of the bad division, but real White Sox fans know it's over.
Tim Anderson has had a season, even a couple of seasons, where you would almost say, yeah, if you have good pitching, you may have a window because of how good your shortstop is playing. That is no longer the conversation surrounding Tim Anderson. What do you think the future holds for TA? Do you think he'll be a White Sox in 2024? And can he ever get back to one of the best shortstop in baseball, which he was at one point in his career?
Yeah, I think the White Sox have a decision to make after the World Series is done. I think they have like 7 days to either accept his team option. I think it's $14 million to play in 2024 for the White Sox, or decline it and just make him a free agent at that point. I think the White Sox are going to accept it because, like you said, if he is Tim Anderson of old, that's a deal. That's a steal at $14 million, and it will be his last year theoretically as a White Sox. And if the White Sox still want to move on from Tim Anderson, accepting that $14 million player or team option is probably the wisest move than just to let him go as a 30-year-old shortstop. As we've seen with Kyle Schwarber, when the Cubs just didn't offer him a contract, he was 28. And yeah, coming off a bad year in 2020, but you see what he's doing in the playoffs now, and subsequently after all the stuff that he got released from the Cubs, he's played well with the Nationals, the Red Sox, and now with the Phillies. I think Tim Anderson, once he leaves the White Sox, and especially if they just let him go with no team option this year, he's going to explode because this is his last year and he's playing for probably his biggest contract as a 31-year-old free agent shortstop. He saw what the guys made last year, and Carlos Correa and Trey Turner, et cetera, Dansby Swanson, to name a few. He's not at that level, but I think he sees himself at that level. And he saw all the money was given out to good shortstops, and he's like, I want a piece of that. And so this year in 2024, there will be his year to reestablish his market and play with some fierceness. He started the year off pretty well until he got hurt, and that's the story of every White Sox player. And then, so this offseason, I think he'll be dedicated himself to being healthy, stopping the soft tissue injuries, and of course, he's not, doing this on purpose, but they just happen to him. And this year will be a year to set up the old Tim Anderson so he can get a new contract in 2025 with some other team, because for most White Sox fans, they see Colston Montgomery, the prospect down in the minor leagues, and now he's at Arizona Fall League, just tearing the cover off the ball. He's young, and so he's probably got another year or two in the minors. And so that means that Tim is pretty much gone after his contract runs up after next year, no matter what. So I think Tim is going to have a monster year no matter what team he's on, and I hope he'll be with the White Sox so he can at least establish his market. And if at the trade deadline, if the White Sox are no good and Tim is still good, you can get some prospects for him because, like you said, he is a top shortstop when he is playing well. And this year he did not play well at all.
All right, a tough one for you. If you had to make the case for Pedro Grifol, he will be back as manager, if you had to make the case for why he deserved to be back in 2024, where would you begin?
Whew, that's a tough one because I'm a guy who really doesn't believe that managers matter a lot in the day-to-day. I mean, they can lose you a game and some can win you games, but for the most part, managers are negligible across the board. There are great managers and there are poor managers, but the most land in that middle ground where there's just nothing going on. So I think, let's see, he speaks the language of most of the players in the White Sox, both English and Spanish, so he can communicate to people in their native tongues. I guess that has a value and a virtue, but I don't see the actual manager, and the post-game comments that he makes leave something to be desired because it's just not as good as I would want to. The answers he gives for the decisions he makes aren't congruent with a team that's winning. They're just go against what the actual play was. And so he's too much of, I want royal people. I want Salvador Perez on the team, on free agent Whit Merrifield on the team. We've already got former Royal Gene Watson as the scouting director. So this is the problem. Initially, I didn't want Pedro Grifol because of him coming from the Royals, and the Royals didn't really want him after 9 years of being their bench coach slash scout, etc. And if they don't want him, why are we trying to accept him? Why are we trying to run from him or run towards him? And so I guess he knows enough people in baseball where he has respect around the league. So I got to give him another year. But his rookie season as a manager was poor, and the players were mostly to blame, but he didn't do anything that instilled a lot of confidence in White Sox fans. His temperament was up and down. If he was a little bit more calm, and I see that from time to time, I can rock with him. But he was kind of getting testy with the media. He was doing things that, like bunting in the American League, and at this day of age, which are just not good things, especially for a team that doesn't score. Bunting, for me, lessens your chance to score more runs. And so he was automatically giving the team a lesser chance to win games. And so the thing that I think players like about him, and that I have to agree with, is that he at least kept players in spots when they struggled. So Tim struggled for a long time at the top of the order. And the call was, hey, you got to drop him down the order. But I'm sure Tim and Andrew Benintendi and other players who struggled this year really liked that he stuck with his veterans and stuck with them through hard times and good times. So they know that he's a steady hand. He's not going to be just trying to fix something that's wrong just in a week. Like, so if you get some bad playing and you're in a slump, you're guaranteed you're going to get your spot back. No one's behind you, and you don't have to worry about the next guy is going to come and replace you or you dropping down in the order. So I guess that is a positive thing for Pedro with a steady hand in keeping the lineups the same and keeping the order kind of static.
Herb, as you know better than anybody, you couldn't talk about the White Sox without using the word culture, right? Culture,
Yep.
culture, culture. To improve the culture, what player or players, do you think absolutely have to be moved out of this clubhouse by 2024?
I mean, it's going to naturally take care of itself. Yasmani Grandal's a free agent, and I think he's a sour guy. There was reports that he and Tim got into a fight, or at least he started the fight after Yasmani Grandal reportedly wanted to leave before the All-Star game and get like a permission slip to get out and go enjoy some time with his family before the All-Star break even happened. And then he reportedly slapped Tim when Tim said, "Get out of here if you want to leave." So him leaving, his presence in the clubhouse is kind of like, he's not that he's not liked, but he's just a strange guy. And I don't need people to be buddy buddy, but the feeling I got from him in the clubhouse was that he was just his own guy, and you don't need that. It's a individual game, but played in a team concept, and you're around these people for more than your family for 6 months of the year. You don't have to be buddy buddy. You gotta get along though a little bit, and I don't think he got along with his teammates. For other culture people, I don't know anybody else who's on this current team that would cause a problem, and it probably will clear up itself with the guy that I mentioned earlier, Mike Clevenger, where I think he's a bad guy. You know, the allegations he had against his baby's mama and the baby himself, but both allegations which MLB cleared him of and just told him to go to anger management classes and not rehab, but drug classes. I think his presence with the fans is a bad mix. Players seem to like him because players don't really care for the most part about the off the field things, and so he jibed and he pitched well for the most part. But once he's gone and he has an option to leave the White Sox because they are going to have to pay him $4 million for the buyout, and then he can go and get his money on the free agent market, I think that's going to happen, and I hope he's not back with the White Sox. So once he leaves and Yasmani leaves, I think you're going to have a brighter, better team there, at least for culture's sake. And then they have to go and find replacements for those two people because they have 3 openings in the starting rotation. And of course, when Yasmani leaves, they don't have a person that can catch behind them for 150 games.
What does your wish list look like this offseason? Whether it be position of need, first of all, most important, and then if there's any players out there wish list wise for you for 2024.
Like I just mentioned, they need starting pitchers, and I know the White Sox are not going to be shopping at the top of the market, but I still want them to try. As we see in the playoffs, you see the players that they missed on, and I'm looking specifically at that Phillies team. Bryce Harper's making $25 million a year. That's a steal. And so we need to get a type of player like that. And I'm not even going to mention Shohei Ohtani because Jerry already poo-pooed that and said he's not going to sign Shohei Ohtani, which it's idiotic. Every team should be in the market or at least checking in to see if Shohei Ohtani's interested in what they want to do because he's a generational talent. And if he pitches and hits, he's going to go down as one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player in the history of baseball. But there's Blake Snell out in San Diego. He's going to win his second Cy Young in his career. He's available, and that's good for the White Sox for multiple reasons. Blake Snell is good friends with Zach LaVine, who's a Bull right now, and I think they're dating sisters, dating and or married to sisters. And so there's a natural fit there. He's a good pitcher. He's a left-hander who is dominant. The White Sox haven't had a left-handed starter who pitched consistently since Carlos Rodon a couple of years ago. That would help them in their rotation. And also, you see Aaron Nola pitching right now for the Phillies. He's a free agent also. The one thing I don't want them to do is go and sign his or trade for his brother Austin, who is in San Diego, to try to lure Aaron here. That's what they did with Yonder Alonso to try to get Manny Machado here a couple of years ago. So those are the two pitchers at the top of the league I would like. And you see who's going to be pitching today for the Texas Rangers on Friday. He's going to be pitching as Jordan Montgomery, also a free agent, been pitching awesome, and also another left-hander. So he won't break the bank, I don't think, unless he keeps on having these great performances in the playoffs like Blake Snell will. I think Blake Snell's going to be up to $25 to $30 million per year. Jordan will probably be maxed out at 25 per, but that would be a great fit. And they just hired a pitching coordinator named Brian Bannister from San Francisco Giants, and he's pretty much a guy who works with reclamation projects. So the White Sox could, and if he wants to, work at the bottom of the market and try to get a guy that had some success in the past and has fallen on hard times. And so if they can get one of those guys, not multiple of those guys, just one of those guys to get the back end of the rotation and Brian Bannister can fix him up, cool, I'm fine with that. And now for the position player part of it, they haven't had a right fielder or a second baseman in a long time, and the market looks terrible for both of those positions. Second base, I think the best available free agent is the guy I mentioned before, Whit Merrifield or Adam Frazier. Neither of them are great shakes, but would all be better than what they had at second base this year in Alessandros. And in right field, they can go back to old partner and old friend, which they missed on multiple times, in Michael Conforto, who's in San Francisco with familiarity with Brian Bannister. And he can play right field because they are not going to go with Oscar Colas, who got demoted 2 times in 2023 after they thought he was going to be the right fielder of the future starting the beginning of this year.
All right, Herb, finally, let's fast forward. Pitchers and catchers report in January. Hope springs eternal, the saying goes. Do you expect to feel hope as we get through these cold months and, the sun's about to start shining? Do you expect to feel hope for the 2024 White Sox?
I do not. One of the reasons is, I've said before,
I respect your honesty.
They have one of the worst organizations in baseball, if not the worst. After they fired Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn, the right move, by the way, they didn't do a search. They looked down the hall for Chris Getz, a guy who was not good at the job that he was at, which was the minor league coordinator for the White Sox for the last 7 years. And he has never done contract negotiations, trades, any of that stuff. He's never been a general manager, or he was assistant general manager under the White Sox, but really was doing minor league stuff, not the major league stuff in contracts. So with all of the openings I just talked about, that guy will have to navigate that with very little help. They hired Josh Barfield from the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's assistant general manager. Brian Bannister will have some decision making as far as the pitching goes, but there's really no experience back there with all the stuff that he has to do. Even the best and the most experienced general manager in the league would have a hard time filling up to 13 spots in this White Sox 26-man rotation or 26-man roster. And so a person that's never done this job, that has no confidence from the fan base and the owner already stating that there's going to be a budget and they're not going to be spending wild, which is exactly what you need to do if they want to compete, which is their stated goal. And the reason why he hired Chris Getz is because Chris Getz can hit the ground running and get this thing back on track quickly. I don't think that an inexperienced general manager is going to be the answer to the White Sox questions. Now, if they would have went, and they still can, get Kim Ng, who got fired or who left the job in Miami, that's a steady hand that you would have and that would do well with the White Sox. She got a 95-plus team that lost a couple of years ago to the playoffs this year in a tough NL East. So that person is a person that can see problems, see culture clashes, fix those, get the people out that need to get out, and bring in the new people, like she traded for Jake Berger and had a great year or a great 53 games with the Miami Marlins, even though they had a quick exit. It's not too late for Jerry Reinsdorf to go and hire Kim Ng for president of baseball operations, but Jerry already stated he only wants one voice as the baseball decision maker, and he's probably not going to go back on it after giving high praise to Chris Getz. I would, but the man's 87 years old. He's pretty much set in his ways.
I would too. And she has White Sox ties, so you never know. Herb, I appreciate your time. I love what you guys do over at CHGO. Good talking to you.
Thank you very much, Judson.
Okay, man.